Okay, we'll call the June 15th meeting of the Planning Commission to order. We'll begin with the pledge to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jess, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Varga.
Here.
Mrs. Simperman.
Here.
Ms. Moritz.
Here.
Mr. Perkovic.
Here.
Mr. Sidoti.
Here.
Mr. Valeri.
Here.
Mr. Snow.
Here. We'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the May 25th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Jess?
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman.
Yes.
Ms. Moritz.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Valeri.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Before we get into the public hearings this evening, there were items tabled at a previous meeting. Items 4, 5, and 6 will remain on the table if you're here for those. And then item number 7 will be dismissed when we get to that point on the agenda. So with that in mind, tonight we have 3 public hearings. The format we follow for public hearings is we allow the applicant an opportunity to tell us what they want to do at a particular location. Then anyone wishing to speak in favor is given an opportunity. Then those wishing to speak against or have questions are afforded a similar opportunity. So with that in mind, tonight's first public hearing is a conditional use permit to allow a salon as a similar use at 8500 Station Street. Is that applicant here? If you come forward to the podium and identify yourself for the clerk, please.
I'm Lisa Krieger.
And I'm Lydia Swaney.
And give us a little overview of what you want to do at that location. Or what are you doing at that location?
We're going
Yeah.
to do hair. And we're going to do yoga and meditation and spa services.
Okay. Is that it? I mean, that's your
It's a
presentation?
salon and wellness center.
Okay.
So we'll do traditional hair salon services, which, a full-service salon.
Okay.
Which includes the full gamut of spa services as well, which are facials, hair removal, massage, Reiki, meditation. We have an infrared sauna. So it'll be a full-service place, one-stop shop.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Spence, any comments from the administration?
Yeah, they're gonna be required to get a building permit, and if they do nails, they're going to have an exhaust system designed.
You're familiar with that now?
Yes.
If they're going to do massages,
Oh,
do they
here's
need,
your letter.
Mr.
came
Spence, do
back
they
to
need
us.
a similar, what if they do massages? Is there anything that they need to be concerned about there?
Well, if they're licensed through the state, then they don't need anything special.
Okay.
But otherwise, yes.
Thank you.
They have to make application with the city and get a license for basically non-therapeutic massage.
Okay, so, anything else, Mr. Spence?
Nope.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Sidoti?
Thank you. Is this a new business, or are you relocating from another location?
A new business.
Oh, welcome to Manor. Good luck.
We're excited.
Good. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
is there any signage that's going to be placed on the building associated with your activity?
Not on the building, just in front.
In a signage with the rest of the
Correct.
existing tenants? Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to approve with one condition?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman.
Yes.
Ms. Moritz.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Valeri.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Second public hearing, conditional use permit to allow outside dining at 9500 Diamond Center. Is that applicant here? Okay,
Motion to table?
motion to table.
Second.
Jess?
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman.
Yes.
Ms. Moritz.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Valeri.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Third public hearing, conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility south of State Route 2, west of Center Street, north of Tyler. I see that applicant's here, so Go right ahead. Identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Brad Goldberg, Vice President of Development for the Visconsi Companies.
Sean Jurish, Engineering Manager for Visconsi Companies.
And we're here tonight to ask for a conditional use permit for the pharmacy drive-through for our proposed grocery store. Very similar to some of the other operations they have, where it's one lane that would provide for pickup and a separate lane that would provide for drop-off for pharmacies, drive-through services. So, and it's standard in most of the, if not all of the locations that we're developing for this
Okay.
particular client.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Spence, any comments from the administration?
On the drive-through window, I think there's a pickup window and a drop-off window. I think it provides for stacking for about
Three?
3 vehicles behind each lane, so there shouldn't be a problem, I don't think, with the pharmacy.
Okay. Commission members, questions for the applicant?
Commissioner? Chairman?
Go right ahead, Mr. Varga.
Yeah, that's right, it's early. I get my head in gear.
That's okay.
Um,
I'll take the
the-
promotion.
The two lanes that are entered, that you enter into the drop-off and pickup lanes, when you finish your business and you're going north in both cases?
Mm-hmm.
If I read the drawing correctly, when you come to the end, you've got to do a 180-degree turn to get out? What's the radius, the inside radius on that turn?
Let the smart guy answer that.
The only reason I bring it up, it looks kind of tight. And for 2 lanes wide, or maybe only one car will turn at a time, but,
It'd be, right,
But is
one
that-
car at a time. Typically, they don't typically have people exiting at the same.
right. Is the city comfortable with that tight radius? Because it only looks like it's about, I don't know, 5 feet,
Didn't
7
get any
feet.
comments back from building department or
My concern is just that it's a tight radius for people who are already preoccupied with picking up and dropping off.
They obviously would have the opportunity to continue north and around the building. This is a similar layout to other centers.
It's more of a question than it is,
Right.
I'm not criticizing it, I'm just saying it looks a little tight for the person to make that turn and do a 180-degree, and might want to just check what the radius is on that, because I think it looks kind of tight to me.
Mr. Spence, you run that by engineering again?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with one condition.
Second. Mr. Varga?
Yes?
Mrs. Simperman?
Yes.
Ms. Moritz?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Valeri?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Number 2? Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to remove it from the table. We tabled it because we bypassed that already, but we can do it now.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to remove from the table?
Second.
When you're ready, Judge.
I'm ready.
Give us a second.
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Varga?
That's to remove from the table?
Remove from.
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman?
Yes.
Ms. Moritz?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Valeri?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes. Okay, now come forward. And if you'd identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Robert Stanovsek,
And
husband of Susan Stanovsek,
and your address.
1436 Oakwood Trail, Paynesville.
Okay. And give us a quick overview of what you want to do there. It's a conditional use permit, obviously, for.
Yeah, we're looking
outside Dining.
putting an enclosed fenced area, which will have 2 exit doors under an overhang that's existing now, which is approximately 10 feet 6. And we're looking at doing 60 feet, which is from 4 columns in front of the restaurant now, and putting outdoor seating there. There'll be 14 tables.
And then, just for clarification, that's the old Brown Derby.
That's correct,
is that
yes,
correct?
the old Brown Derby, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Spence, any comments from the administration?
Yeah, I think there was one comment about, we may want or some bollards along the front of that. It is a drive aisle.
Well, if that's the case, then we want decorative bollards.
Yes.
We don't want to look like we're tying
Yeah,
up a
no,
freight.
and I'm aware of that.
Okay.
I've been told that, that's not a problem at
And
all.
I think we also want to be sure that are you going to use umbrellas there? If you're going to use umbrellas, we want to be sure that there's no advertising on the umbrellas.
I don't think we will use umbrellas. It's
Okay.
completely undercover now.
Well,
So that may only be for aesthetics, and if we do, then definitely we won't use any advertising.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, I think we put that in as a condition, Mr. Spence.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the bollards will be decorative in terms of some sort of floral
Yeah,
arrangements.
my wife's very good at
Otherwise, it
that.
looks like we're tying off a freighter, and we don't want to look like that.
Yeah, okay.
So, commissioners, questions?
Chairman?
Comments? Mr. Varga?
Let's assume you're gonna put the bollards there that we just talked about. What's this, we have a very small remnant sidewalk there. Do we know what the width of that is from the face of the column to the back of the curb right now?
10'6".
No,
Oh,
no, I'm talking about that's the curb right there, right? Right
Yes.
here. It looks very narrow. Do you know what that width is, would be, if you put a fence up between the fence and the driveway?
no, I don't know what that distance would be.
My concern is that it's not very wide, and that's the sidewalk that connects the two parts of the front of the building here. If you're gonna put a bollard there too, I don't think you'd be able to walk through. You wouldn't be able to walk past this. You'd have to walk into the street, and now that's a different problem. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Comment, Mr. Spence?
Well, you need, I think, 3 feet for accessibility for a sidewalk. and
That's just for one direction, yeah.
Right.
But you'd have people come in at both directions. I'm not saying that you couldn't live with it, but I'm afraid the bollards would have to go into the paved area. Otherwise, you're gonna completely block that sidewalk. And if the bollards are in the pavement, does the city have a problem with that?
Yes, no, maybe?
Well, I think you'd have to protect them with bumper blocks at least, so that
You
the
see-
front of the
yeah, well,
car doesn't hit them.
That's right. Well, you see where this is going, we're getting more and more stuff in front of this, gonna ask him to do a bunch of
So
stuff.
when it was the Brown Derby and we approved the outdoor dining, which never went in, but nonetheless, we approved the outdoor dining, correct?
Correct.
What accommodation was there then, if you remember?
I don't remember.
I hate to be such a stickler, I'm just concerned that when this thing gets fixed or built out, that people will be walking in the street because there won't be enough room to walk past it, which is not a good outcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Valeri?
I think we can integrate bollards into that decorative fencing, which would address the bollard
It could work.
situation.
Right.
So, I mean, you're gonna end up
Yeah.
having a more expensive
Yeah,
fence.
that's fine, we'll just
But-
tee off it from each, yeah.
Right, and again, to Mr. Snow's point, not a big yellow bollard, so I mean, you're gonna end up needing to find a decorative bollard
Right.
to build your fence off of, which I think would take care of the safety standpoint. For me, I guess my main issue is then the distance for the walk-around traffic. So to piggyback on your comment,
Right, yeah,
Is-
because the way it was tabled, the fence is quite close to the curb.
Okay.
So what you're saying, you'd require distance for the walkway. So if that's the case, then it would ideally be probably half the size of what it is then in width.
I feel
Maybe
as though
6
we
feet,
need.
just have one row of tables, which is fine, because in all honesty, we're looking at just aesthetically, as people drive by, oh, look, there's outdoor dining, it looks attractive.
I think I would like to see at least some type of a walk-around, so people aren't in the street. I believe it still may be tabled, there was a potential drive-through in the shopping center down that potentially traffic's gonna be going up and down here. It was Taco Bell. Is that still tabled?
Yes.
So I mean, with that increased traffic, I'd hate to see people have to
Right.
walk through. So if you would be able to cut back your sidewalks.
So how much, what what width would you require then? What would be,
As long as we've got 3 feet. So as long as there's 3 feet,
Because I know it's 10 feet 6, so then, all right,
okay.
no problem.
Were you
So-
you feeding one of us the answer there? Was that a quiz?
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Simperman?
I'm completely confused on this whole thing. We don't allow anybody to do anything on sidewalks throughout the city. Our ordinances say there's not supposed to be any outdoor storage, there's not supposed to be any display of merchandise, sidewalks are for pedestrian use. Suddenly, we're saying it's okay to have a patio area on a sidewalk. So I have to be honest, if we're not going to be so strict on people not being able to put merchandise on sidewalks because they're supposed to be used for sidewalks, I don't think we should be putting tables out there either.
Mr.
And-
Cobb, did you have
and
a
I-
comment relative to the 3 feet?
My recommendation would be a minimum of 3 feet, and they'll just have to work with the difference there, but that pedestrian access needs to be maintained.
Right. So we're maintaining pedestrian access. So we're not taking away the sidewalk area, right, Mr. Spence?
True, plus you could walk through the patio.
So you can accommodate what we're asking you to accommodate,
Yes.
okay? Mr. Valeri, anything else?
I was going to say, I think we should add that as a sixth condition, and seventh will need, the sixth being ensuring that we maintain 3 feet of sidewalk space,
Minimum of 3
a
feet.
minimum of 3 feet.
Right.
And then number 7 would be integrating decorative bollards into the fencing.
And then number 8 would be the,
Yeah, we'll do the umbrellas too. If in fact umbrellas do go on the patio,
Right.
no
We've
appetite.
definitely, we've been moved in 3 feet. I wouldn't see there being umbrellas.
Well,
I wouldn't see any necessity for it.
sometimes as time passes, things happen.
Okay,
And we want to be sure things don't happen.
all right.
So we'll include that as a condition. Anything else? Mr. Varga, anything?
No,
else?
thanks.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a comment on condition 5, which states the patio furniture should be stored inside the building when not being used. Typically, we have that, let's say, during the off-season, so that they don't necessarily have to remove it in the
We have a
PM
mini
close.
storage, permanent, we've had a mini storage for 10 years around the corner, so that's where it will go.
Okay.
That way it would be a non-issue.
So it's either inside or off-site.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
No
Mr.
problem.
Chairman,
Mrs. Simperman?
I think what Mr. Perkovich was trying to emphasize was the condition says when the patio is not being used, and I think he'd rather have it say during the off-season.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah. Which, I'm assuming we'll probably have gas heat lamps out there September, October, so.
Mr. Zeman, anything?
Just check with the fire department relative to the gas heaters underneath that awning.
Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with 8 conditions.
Second,
Mr. Varga,
yes.
Mrs. Simperman,
No.
Ms. Moritz,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Valeri,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
As I mentioned earlier, items 4, 5, and 6 are remaining on the table. Item 7, Mr. Spence will be dismissed.
They've requested that be dismissed.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to remove it from the table.
So moved.
Second.
Just when you're ready.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman.
Yes.
Ms. Moritz,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Valeri,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes,
Motion to dismiss without prejudice.
Second.
when you're ready.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman.
Yes.
Ms. Moritz,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Valeri,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Okay, item 8, final site plan and architectural review of commercial development located south of Route 2, west of Center Street, north of Tyler. If you re-identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Brad Goldberg, Vice President of Development for the Visconsi Companies.
And the IT man.
Sean Jers, Engineering Manager from Visconsi Companies.
Okay, we're here to talk site now, correct?
There, he switched.
There you go. So good evening, and tonight we ask for your approval or final approval from the Planning Commission for the proposed project that we're working on at Route 2 and 615. Over the last few meetings, we've collected the comments that have been made in the Planning Commission meetings and in a separate work session where majority of those, the comments and the suggestions that were able to be incorporated are incorporated onto the site plan that you have in front of you. It's going to run through a list because I know that the Planning Commission members have received the information. Quite frankly, I don't know if you want me to go through the whole presentation again or just highlight the things that we've added since the last meeting.
Why don't you highlight the things we've added since the last meeting?
Great. So you'll notice that we've added fencing, landscape fencing and piers along Tyler and along Center Street, brick piers where in the frontage in which we own or will control. We've also added landscaping along the main entryways into the center. You'll notice that we added a landscape strip in the parking lot from our proposed grocer, the length of the parking field to the interior road, just to the north of the outlots. We have gone ahead and, trying to think what else we've added there. The sidewalk. We've also added a sidewalk from El Rodeo Mexican Restaurant along the westerly property lines of the outlots to allow walkable access to the parking field in front of the anchor tenant. We've added a bike rack that allows for 8 bikes. Code is 17. I think that is pretty much it. Did I leave anything else out? I think I pretty. And then, right, we also, I think at the last Planning Commission meeting, it was suggested we at least make an attempt to show the conceptual building footprints of what we, give a conceptual for what some of the buildings may look like once they're placed, and that's what that plan will show you. You'll see the footprints of conceptual buildings of how they would lay in with those sizes compared to the code and the circulation, so you guys can get some type of visual. So if there aren't any questions, I'll move on to the next part, would be the.
Commissioners, any questions at this point? Okay, go right ahead.
Next, we're going to talk about the elevations. So we worked, and we have a material board also, we worked with our client to address the concerns that were brought up again at a work session and a few of the last Planning Commission meetings. Some of the things you'll notice, they lightened the color of the block for the building. They've gone ahead and really what that is just a better demonstration of the glass that they were planning on using. The last demonstration was poor. You'll see that they've added landscaping islands to the piers of the building, or the foundation rather. And I think in regards to some of the concerns regarding the elevations, these were things that were highlighted that we were able to get them to agree to do. Also, one comment I want to make that, and it's not reflective here, is all of the rooftop equipment will be screened from Center Street and Tyler. So it's something where they'll be coming back when they submit their plans. The reason why it can't be shown is that with technology, a lot of the rooftop equipment is housed actually in different parts of the building. So until this building's actually engineered and the floor plan's done, it'd be difficult to show where it is, but they are committed, and we're committed to make sure that the rooftop units are screened from Center and Tyler, which I know was a concern of the Planning Commission's and brought up to us. So then what you have here is just the actual material board, because you do lose some detail when it's presented up there versus what we see here in paper and here. So we actually brought in the actual materials that will be used, except ours won't be cracked in the building.
So the windows are see-through windows?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think one of the earlier renderings, that it wasn't not apparent.
It was not, it was, right, that was the attempt, but it was not a very good attempt on their, yeah, I'm blaming them, it wasn't us.
Okay.
We would never do such a thing.
Thank you, Senator.
So something else, is there any questions on the elevations in regard before we move on? If I may?
Mrs. Zimmerman?
How are you going to screen the rooftop units?
Well, there's a couple of different ways they can screen that. The one, there's a parapet, which unfortunately, when you raise the parapet, that makes it adds weight to the building. There's different materials they use, and what they're prepared to do is that's something they're gonna have to come in once when they come in for work with the city, and have some type of material that screens the equipment.
And you
So,
said it's,
and I don't know if you wanna, I don't know if you wanna add something to that in regards to some of the material that might be used.
No, just that, in speaking with the tenant, the majority of their RTUs are towards the center of the building or behind in this circumstance, behind the larger portions of the building where you should be able to screen it adequately. But as Brad mentioned, they have committed to ensuring that they will be screened and then can come in and show the perspective views that those are indeed screened from Center Street and Tyler.
and you said that they would be screened from Tyler and Center?
Right.
How about the other views? It's because
I
it's
think-
supposed to be screened from all sides.
Well, I think it would be impossible to screen it from Route 2, since Route 2's elevation is much higher. So that would be, that's been addressed, that's an impossible task.
Right, but at ground level, you could screen it from Route 2.
Right.
And how about from the west side?
In the MMI.
We can make that happen. And
Because,
the
I mean,
concern, the reason why I focused in on Center Street
Right.
and Tyler, because that was, but.
Right.
But,
I just want you to be aware it has to be screened from all sides. Okay. Thank you.
sure,
Mr. Spence, anything else from the city?
what's next?
Mr. Traub, did you have a comment?
As a part of the building permit, could you include a line of sight study for the roof-mounted units? Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman?
Mr. Snow.
Mr. Valeri?
Sorry.
You finished? Okay, Mr. Valeri?
Again, when we talk about screening HVAC, there's that really nice Cleveland Clinic in Beechwood that has some nice screening around all of the HVAC. You guys can take a look at that potentially, and thank you.
Sure. You?
Yeah, to follow up on that, I think what everyone is looking for, yeah, I'm sorry. What everyone is looking for is an architectural product with a finish, pre-finished, factory finish, with a color that is acceptable to your entire scheme, that it's not just an afterthought material, it's not just some fencing or something, that it's a bona fide product, architectural product used for the purposes of screening
Right.
medical equipment.
And since, keep in mind, we're gonna own the building, they do have some say-so, but we're gonna be the ones that are ultimately responsible, so we'll make sure that's handled appropriately.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Sidoti?
Thank you. What is the status of the negotiations in getting that traffic signal lined up with the plaza across the street, the one here by the existing Horizon Gate?
Yeah, that's been agreed to, we actually have,
Oh.
yeah, they've agreed to, that's a sign, we have a signed deal with them to go ahead and allow us to relocate their curb cut to line up with ours on Tyler.
Good, okay, thank you.
Just
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Valeri?
Can we go back and talk a little bit more about the landscaping? I don't see, unless I'm missing it, finishing schedule for landscaping as far as what are you putting, what type of trees, and is it,
It's in there.
It's in here?
what,
Plant material list?
yeah.
Yeah,
where-
it's in there. It's on the side of one of the pages.
I see 6.
You got it?
C6. Or?
I have it on screen. Sorry, I have it on screen here.
Oh, perfect, thank you. And then irrigation, you guys are gonna install?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
It's something that even if it's not code-wise, it's something we do in our projects, so. Even if it wasn't required.
And
Thank you.
Just remember, you got to turn it on also.
Oh,
I mean, we have people that put the irrigation in and then never turn it on.
we do do such a thing?
I don't know.
Me.
Not at a public meeting, I wouldn't tell you who it is. So,
Is there any other questions regarding the elevations? Before we move on to, okay, so what we've done here is, there were questions last time in regards to what the project potential will look like from Center Street and from Tyler. So this was an pretty detailed attempt to give you a visual of what we're envisioning the project to look like from both access points. So I think we have there's two. That's showing obviously from Center Street looking into the proposed gas station C-store portion of the site with the anchor tenant.
so where did the
West of
overhead
that.
wires go?
I'm sorry?
He said, where did the overhead wires go?
Underground.
Good,
Mr. Chairman,
go right ahead.
on your previous, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Yes, on that one, is that the entrance from Tyler?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not the intersection of Tyler and 615? Okay,
No, right, correct.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga?
I understand that you don't have specific tenants for these buildings, and so the signage that would be associated with the tenant isn't shown right now.
That's correct.
I got that. And the signage would come back to the city for approval in any case. What about signage that has to do, like with an entry sign or a pylon sign that would list multiple tenants? I don't see anything in any of these images that would show an additional sign of any kind, and I'm thinking there's probably going to be signs like that.
There will be signs, so we're proposing, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. This is supposed, obviously, we're not showing the actual signage on it, but this pier is intended to be a sign with the angle that this is shown. It does.
Oh, okay, well, that's
doesn't-
good, though. So your sign, I mean, to get a commitment that your entry signage that would show multiple tenant signs would be similar in design as the rest of these stone,
Right.
or these brick piers that are defining the perimeter, so you'll integrate the signage with that expression.
That's correct.
That's a good
I know
answer.
you're going with that question, I wanted to bring the smart guy in.
Okay, no, but I appreciate that approach.
So, and another thing that's very important that we know is a concern, and what we've done is we've created and have attached design guidelines in which will be part of any transaction we do with any of the outlot users. And we do this on most of our projects, but maybe not necessarily to this size, but it was a concern that the Planning Commission of the city had to make sure there was cohesiveness and some type of theme throughout the center. So we went and we established and drafted design guidelines, and each outlot user or each building will be obligated to follow these design guidelines when they go to design and build their building, which again will provide cohesiveness and the theme that has been discussed as a concern in previous planning commission meetings. So we're hoping that addresses the concerns that have been raised a few times. With that being said, I don't know if I left anything out, but at this time, if there are any questions, we would.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Simperman?
The administration, and I agree with them in this respect, had suggested having an entrance onto the Tyler entrance from the daycare. So making an accessible driveway from the daycare to your main entrance on Tyler.
So that's something that is in process of being discussed. It's not been, we're gonna do our best to make that happen, but it's not, and we understand the staff has presented that concern to us, so we're working on addressing that concern right now, but it's not been something that's been achieved right now.
But Visconsi has no problem with it. You gotta-
No, we have
you
no
gotta
problem
get-
with it.
You gotta get the concurrence of the
Right.
daycare center.
Correct.
Okay.
Good. And then I was curious about the, how trucks will enter and exit. So those trucks that are making deliveries to the loading dock, what entrance are you thinking they're going to come in on, and which entrance are they going to be leaving on? Exit.
For the anchor tenant, they'll be able to come in off of Center Street and successfully make that turn here to the north. there is there's a turnaround area there at the north side of the anchor tenant that would allow them to come in and make the turn to back into the loading dock. This will be the main loading dock for the tenant.
And then they'll exit through the same,
Exactly, yep. Come right
and
back
what if
there.
they're, is that that's not a right-in only, so they can come from the south also?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't restricted and it had to go out maybe off of Tyler, which wouldn't be any benefit to them, so, okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga.
I feel motivated to bring this up again relative to the overall plan. We were just talking about the drop-off lane before. But as I look at the overall plan, I'm not sure what I want you to do, or I'm not trying to tell you to do something different, but I just feel a little uncomfortable with those cars making that 180-degree turn. There's a major driveway immediately across from them, coming out of the. That's where all the traffic would come out of what do you call it, the C-store. And and we just identified that the trucks were going to be using that as an entrance to get to the back of the building. All that happens in that really tight little space there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm looking for is, it might have to be some traffic control devices, stop signs. Maybe that double lane coming off of the service window goes down to one lane close to the building and then increases its radius so that you can get out. I'm just concerned with the congestion there at that one spot, because like you said, you just introduced the trucks are coming through there too.
Mr. Spence, you said you would take that back to the engineer, right?
Right.
So,
I just want to
I
reemphasize
mean, we can do that.
Yeah, that looks like a congested spot.
If we find that there's a conflict, we'll
Work it out with the city.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
We must see.
Yeah.
Yes,
Just
Mr. Zeman?
I think at the prior meeting, there were some questions raised about the material that was going to be used behind the sign that's above the awning. We don't have any building plans or anything. I don't know if, in one of the photos, it seems like a solid material, and then there's some representations that it was more of a, I don't know, mesh-type material. So I don't know if the commission wanted to address that since this is final.
Do you have any comments relative to that?
I'm gonna, so, go ahead.
It does show that, it does show it's solid here, but it is a mesh screen that, it's just a very dense screen. So, but I agree, it does come off looking solid in this picture, but
Do you have by any chance have a sample of that? On your board?
do not.
We don't, but it's something that they can
You can
bring back.
get to the city? Okay.
Do you have any guidance? I think the concern was, does it look like a chain link fence or something? I think I'm putting a that wasn't the exact phrase, but I thought that was sort of the concern, is that it actually look a little bit more solid perhaps than.
And that's actually what, that is the mesh. It looks solid in the picture, but it gives you, that is the same material, but it looks solid, but that's the same background that we're gonna be using, here.
If that addresses the commission's concern, I mean, that's.
Mr. Traub, comment?
Just a comment, and this is really for the benefit of both the administration as well as the commission. The guidelines that we have here, the only other project, as some of the more mature members of the commission know, are relative to the Newell Creek development. But this is a new step that we're taking relative to commercial development, and I hope we're as successful in executing it as we're looking forward to this evening. But it's certainly a good way to start the process. So when individuals are contacting the property owners as to desire to build, they'll be seeing this up front, and they won't be coming to the commission meeting saying, gee, I didn't know you had
We didn't know
design
anything
guidelines
about
or
it,
something
right?
like that. So hopefully this will be a good tool, and can use something like this in the future.
I think it just behooves Wisconsin to have that as well. I mean, because you want a nice overall concept here, as we do.
But actually, we had, when the elevation first came in, we had a concern of the sign, maintenance, the appearance, but since we've seen a couple, and It's part of their branding, so there's certain things that we can go ahead and persuade, but there's certain things that the tenants consider part of their branding, and this is part of their branding. But after looking at it ourselves, it showed much better than it did, actually more like this than it did on the elevations and
Okay,
so forth.
and you can make that available to Mr. Spence, so we can see it subsequent to this meeting today, should any questions arise. Right?
Yes,
Okay. I was looking for a nod.
I'm sorry, I was talking to you too.
Okay. Mrs.
I'm
Simperman?
multitasking.
The administration had suggested installing the street trees for all the outlot that you have located on the site. You were mentioned in your application that each outlot was going to be responsible for the street trees, and the administration had suggested all the trees be planted at one time. Do you understand what I'm asking?
You want the landscaping done at one time, I don't think that's, I'm trying to.
The street trees at least along the
Right, I
outlets, because those aren't gonna be disturbed as part of construction.
No, I'm just trying to, I was thinking when
Well, I'm just
construction though, but,
Well, if it's
That's why we were not putting those in, is
because of
right,
construction.
It gave us the ability between the piers to come in for the, for
Utility.
example, some of the utilities, the water department.
right, it's not us, what happens is that the contractor, these guys they'll find the,
Tear it up.
right, great. So we're not opposed to making sure, but the last thing we want to do is spend the money, have that put in, just have it destroyed. And that's been, what-
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga?
An alternative to that would be that when they do put the trees in, they have to match the species and size of the other trees. So the last guy in is going to buy a lot of big trees. The first guy in gets to buy small trees, but they should all look the same. So the caliber of the trees should be, if you want to plant the trees after construction, that's fine. Should be the same caliber as the other trees that have already been planted.
That's okay, that's acceptable.
But, if somebody waits a long time, the tree's gonna get big.
Because as we talked at previous meetings, we want that campus feel, that atmosphere. So, the point well taken. Anything else, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Valeri?
sticking with those trees, outlets 3, 4, 5, do you have a time frame on those as far as, I'd hate for us to kick this down the road and then find out that you don't have anything planned and,
Oh, we actually have more tenants and more users than we've got opportunity for, so.
okay, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Spence, anything else? Mr. Traub, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Zeman, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Simperman, did you have a comment?
Mr.
Or-
Bergovich?
Yeah, I do. One comment for the applicant. Just after looking at your off-site views, specifically the one from Tyler, some of the proposed buildings, even though I know these aren't actual tenants now, but they're showing a contrasting type of cornice work, which I think is sadly lacking from the main building, grocery tenant. If you can convince them in any way to get some sort of a banding at the top, whether it's even using the same material but corbelling it out to get a shadow line, something, it just might help the building in itself. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioners, anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, and I'm going to make some changes. Number 4, it's a bike rack detail shall be provided as part of the final building permit, and that will be for eight bicycles, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure that we had the 8 bicycles in there. 6th condition will be that the HVAC screening will have a line of sight done for the final building permit from all sides. A 7th condition will be, help me with this wording, I'm going to say the caliber and the species of all trees shall be consistent once the development is finished.
Street trees.
Right.
Great trees.
Street trees, yes, thank you. Street tree caliber and species shall be consistent. I think that was everything, but I may have missed something.
And you'll also share the background, the meshing with administration.
Is that a condition?
I think so. I think
Okay.
we want to see it.
And then should I also include Mr. Perkovich's idea about the cornice?
Well, I think it would be nice if that could happen, but I'm not sure it will happen.
Yeah, I could, other than that last one, we can control it. An outlot user is gonna come in and present in front of you with their design guidelines, so you'll have an opportunity at that time, but it's very difficult, it'd be a condition, would be very tough for us to police. Everything else, I can
Yeah.
obligate to, but that
If the
last.
commissioners could keep in mind that when these outlots do come in, you know, that it would be the appropriate time to talk to these individuals
Right.
about that.
Then I have 8 conditions.
Second.
Jess, when you're ready.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman,
Yes.
Ms. Moritz,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Valeri,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments and your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we want to be sure, Mr. Spence, that the engineer looks at that turning radius that Mr. Varga brought up. So, okay.
Thank you.
Item number 9, architectural review, reimaging of a retail center. I see that applicant's here. And if you'd identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Hi, Robert Morazek, representing IRC Retail Centers, which owns the Creekside Shopping Center in Menor.
Give us a quick overview of what you want to do there.
We are requesting to change the color of the 2 main buildings, the awnings, and the monument signs in front as well.
And we want to change to what?
To the color, I'm sorry?
You want to change it to what color? I mean, not everyone has the luxury of having the information we have, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
The lighter color would be a new gray, and the darker color would be dovetail gray, and the awnings would be black.
Black. And the awnings
They're
would
currently
be-
green.
And the awnings would be comparable to the Blaze Pizza?
Correct, yes. The colors would be comparable to the Blaze Pizza building that was recently approved.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Anybody at all?
Motion to approve with 2 conditions.
Second.
Jess, when you're ready.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman,
Yes.
Ms. Moritz,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Valeri,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Put that back.
So when you go back, tell them what a rough time you had tonight. I mean, you sweated bullets trying to get this passed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Item 10, informal rezoning of 1.92 acres, single-family to, Mr. Perkovic, you need
Yes.
to
I'm going to step down.
step
Thank you.
down on this. And if you'd identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Yeah, Timothy Moore, co-owner, Line Chiropractic.
Justin Wyatt, co-owner, Align Chiropractic.
Mark Moultrie, owner of Gem Construction.
Okay? And what do we want to do there? We want to rezone some property, is that correct?
Yeah, the residential lot at, is it 8040 Broadmoor, I think? Yeah, 8040 Broadmoor Road to commercial.
Okay, Mr. Spence, comments from the administration.
Yeah, the administration would make one comment. The commercial center currently has split zoning, and there's a large piece of residential property in the back. It may be appropriate to include that into the rezoning request. I don't know if you've
Have you had
contacted.
any conversation with that?
We
property?
we have had 2 phone calls in to contact the owner of that lot, and they, as of right now, are considering it, is what they said. We will touch base with them again.
Well, we can't do their property without them agreeing to have their property done. Is that right, Mr. Zeman?
No.
It's not right, or it is
No, I
right?
can, the commission can initiate an amendment to the zoning district map if it feels that it's consistent with good planning practice. It's unusual in the city. We've, I think, not done that, probably in quite a few decades. But to the extent there's split zoning back there and that rear portion of the parcel is simply not developable for residential use, it may make perfect sense to rezone it to a commercial use.
Okay.
If the property owners object to it, certainly that's a dialogue that's worth having. But again, the split zoning is something that would be nice to be corrected at some point. It causes more problems than it
I would guess it
anything
would
else.
be.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Simperman.
So, let me try to understand this. Is the property owner, this is for the administration, is the property owner of 7390 also the property owner of 8020?
No,
They're two different property owners,
correct.
but the property of 8020 is residential.
Split.
Where's the split occur? Or where is 8020? Maybe that's where I'm having problems with. Oh, so 8020 is part of the multi-tenants.
This is the commercial development.
Okay,
They own this too. Here's the zoning line, the commercial zoning.
so the multi-tenant owns the 8020.
He owns this too.
Okay. So the only access you have to the 8020 parcel is through that commercial development, correct?
Well, right, and plus if we rezone the parcel that they're looking at, we'd have an island of residential zoning really with not much access. Plus this all backs up to the school site. It will require a referendum.
Okay. Mr. Varga, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
And I would also say, we might, as part of the formal rezoning, might want to incorporate a development plan as part of the rezoning
Okay.
to see what we're getting.
Well, bottom line is if the commission wants to direct, the administration can reach out to that property owner and just indicate that the planning commission has taken a look at the issue there and may on its own initiative, recommend that it be rezoned and see if we can get a little dialogue going with them.
I
Again,
think that would be a good idea. I'd hate to just rezone somebody's property without them being part and parcel to this whole thing.
But, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga.
but if we go ahead with this, change, we've created a inconsistent zoning map to some degree. We've got an island of residential surrounded by retail business.
Frankly, I think the likely outcome is that the city gets challenged on that now residual split residential zoning because it's not going to be developable for any residential use. I suppose maybe you could try to access it through the commercial drive aisle, but how is that going to be a marketable product? I mean, no one's going to drive home, in front of their that way. So again, it seems to make good planning sense to at least explore that as an option, and it may also address some buffer requirements that otherwise are going to come up if that would remain residential.
And, Mr. Chairman, I just have one other question.
Go right ahead.
The existing 8040 property, that has a single-family house, is that what that is there?
Correct.
And are you going to incorporate that into business, or is it going to be demolished?
That will be demolished.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Larry.
I guess I don't feel comfortable voting on this without really seeing.
We're not voting on anything tonight.
Informal.
It's just discussion tonight.
I don't feel comfortable with this at all, because I don't feel as though there's enough information even to really have a conversation. Besides, there's this piece of property here that you want to put a building, which looks really nice, don't get me wrong, but how's it all going to flow? How's it going to function? And without having some type of a site plan makes me feel.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So we are in the process of putting together that preliminary work. We've engaged Polaris Engineering, and they're putting together a preliminary site plan for us, as well as an architect that will be designing preliminary floor plan and elevation views of the structure. So we were advised that this was the first step in the process, that we wouldn't necessarily get a yes or no today, but get essentially a temperature of the room to see if this was something that was even possible or would be considered by the board. And if it would be, then we would continue down the path of, putting that information together and them making that small investment, because obviously you know, there are some costs involved in putting that information together, so.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
So, prior to any formal submission then, you do want some definitive feedback from the property owner at 80/20 as to whether or not they'll buy in?
I'd like to have that.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, whatever that answer may be, in other words.
I know.
Okay.
So that's the direction we need to go. So you're working on a plan, we want to see the plan, and we want to need some confirmation or no confirmation from the other property owner. Are they in or are they not in?
And is the, are you going to assist with that? Is that what I heard?
Well,
Sure.
I mean, we could.
Yeah, we'll help.
Again, if the planning commission directs, then certainly we can indicate that the planning commission on its own initiative is interested in having that discussion, so.
I think it's an appropriate discussion. It
Yeah.
doesn't preclude from going forward, but I don't see how we can necessarily rezone, again, somebody's property, although we can, without their knowledge and concurrence.
Right.
We would also potentially consider the, I don't know if that could be split into, and actually purchase that portion of the residential to make it all commercial. If he was willing to obviously sell that portion of the property.
Could do that, sure. Okay,
I think our issue is, you know, receiving a response from the gentleman, so.
okay. I think Mr. Spence has indicated that he would be willing to assist in that regard, so.
Yeah.
Right, Mr. Spence?
Yes,
Okay,
we'll give him a call.
so there we are.
Perfect.
Okay,
Great.
thanks, guys.
Thank
Minor subdivision of a commercial lot, create two commercial lots at 7850 Menor Avenue. Here we go. Let the record show that Mr. Perkovic has returned.
Hello, my name is Matt Jerkowitz, Director of Development, Washington Prime Group. Washington Prime Group is a parent of Mall at Great Lakes LLC, the owner of Great Lakes Mall. And?
My name is Steve Metcalf of Neff and Associates. I'm the surveyor of record for this.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we are, again, seeking this preliminary approval for the minor subdivision that you see on the map above. I guess you guys can see it on your screens. It's a 1.1508 acre parcel fronting Plaza Boulevard. It's very, very close to the Olive Garden for those who are trying to place it on the site. You can see it here. This is the Olive Garden, this is Menor Avenue, this is Plaza Boulevard. We are, WPG is not currently the owner of record, but we will be acquiring the site hopefully by the end of June, together with the Dillard's Men's Store parcel that you see, the former, I guess now, Dillard's store that recently closed to consolidate into their women's store. The parcel that that we will be acquiring will be in tandem with that separate parcel that's home to what was the Dillard's Men's Store. Again, we hope to close on that parcel and take down the fee to this out parcel that we would be creating within the next 30 days.
So the out parcel adjacent to the Olive Garden is just to the south of that drive aisle, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Spence, any comments from the administration?
None at this time.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, just,
Mr. Varga?
the parking that the lot that you're defining and the parking that's being removed, is that causing any distress with the old Dillard's Men's building being useful in the future? I mean, that's where the parking is associated.
Right, so one thing to note is that we will be, at the time of closing, entering into an REA agreement with Dillard's that would allow for cross-parking, would allow for, cross-access for vehicular and pedestrian traffic, utility easements, et cetera. The site, just for what it's worth, will actually park at about a 10-to-1 ratio once we ultimately put a tenant on it. And the site itself, the broader site itself, more than satisfies the local ratio requirement. So we're not in a position right now where we have any concerns. And actually, our plans for the Dillard's Men's Store, which I'm not at liberty right now to say because we don't have signed executed leases, would see the second level of that store not put into use right away. So our expectation is that roughly 60,000 square feet of GLA will come out of the GLA ratio for the site.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with two conditions.
Second.
Jess, when you're ready.
Mr. Varga,
Yes?
Mrs. Simperman,
Yes.
Ms. Moritz.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Valeri,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Item 12, final subdivision of 51 Village Green Lots, Lakeshore Boulevard, Highlands, Lakeshore Highlands, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Richard Summers, Summers Real Estate Group. We're here for final approval tonight. We basically addressed mostly landscaping comments and site amenity comments from the original plan. The streetscape plan has stayed the same. There's been no changes in the street. We've, if I may, the landscape plan has been updated and have a color rendering. See this? And like to address some of the comments that were made previously. We have added a gazebo. We've added walking paths, hard surface walking paths. We've addressed the comments from the previous meeting about the mound along Route 44. We've addressed the mailbox area and the parking area. And I believe there are detailed landscape plans throughout. There will be a walking path around the pond, the retention pond, in the northeast corner of the property. Off-street mailbox parking as you come in. Basically, I think we've addressed most of the, or all of the planning commission comments from previous meetings.
Any questions for the applicant? Any comments from the administration, Mr. Spence?
Yeah, the one comment I had was, I wanted sidewalks along the front of all the sublots and along Lakeshore Boulevard.
That's agreeable.
Okay.
Like, it's in condition, but I just wanted to make sure that we got those.
On the record?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one question I have, if I may, is on page 4, at the very bottom, it asks, the administration would ask that the islands are provided in cul-de-sacs, the owners of the lots fronting on the turnaround shall maintain the vegetation. We would ask if we can have the HOA maintain those. I think you'll get more, again, it should, we feel it should be an HOA responsibility. I don't know.
Thoughts?
I got a thought. Provided there is an HOA, if at some time the HOA should dissolve, then those property owners will have to take care of it, because otherwise.
I think we could just include a note on the plat that the adjoining property owners and/or the HOA is responsible for the maintenance. Because I guess what happens if the HOA went bye-bye, then we have a property maintenance issue where they're not maintaining it, then we have to notify those adjacent property owners. And if the plat has that on there, we can show that to the owners saying, hey, you guys are responsible.
We're fine with that,
Okay.
as long as we have the option to.
Just, it's for code enforcement, basically.
Correct.
Okay, we can do that. Commissioners, questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Simperman?
just a question about the name of the, well, a couple questions actually, but one is about the name. I've seen Amiot Lane and I've seen Amiot Way. Which one is it?
Mr. Traub?
They're going to need to come up with a new name for the street. That
Okay.
was,
Okay. Well, then, we don't have to worry about it.
Okay, that was an easy one.
I didn't know about that.
Okay, the next thing I had was about the conditions, and just the wording again. So it says, the first condition is comments per the city engineer shall be addressed in writing and included with the final subdivision plan submittal. Isn't this the final subdivision plan submittal right now?
Well, they've got to submit subdivision plans to the city,
So,
to the building department, we could put,
how about final building permit?
well, it's not a building permit.
So
We,
what-
we do a set of development plan, subdivision development plans. We
So-
review them.
So give Jess the proper
Proper.
terminology for that then.
As part of the building permit.
So
We are
include,
gonna do it as part of the building permit then.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then, same thing with condition number 3 and condition number 4. Again, the final subdivision plan shall include.
As part of the building permit.
Just again, the wording is confusing to me. You're okay with that, Mr.
Sure.
Summer?
Anything else, Mrs. Zimmerman?
Not from me.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Sidoti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Summers, you just said that along State Route 44, that's mounded to some degree with the trees planted on the mound?
Correct. There is a detail, I believe, on page LP6. Detail. Part of it's on 6, but it's definitely a mound, comes all the way back to the entrance to the subdivision. It's also on LP3. Just splits it, but you'll see that there is a mound using evergreens, so we have year-round screening.
Approximately how high on the evergreens?
We'd like to see a 3-foot mound or so with a 3-to-1 slope so you can maintain it. And then, I don't know what I'd have to look. I believe they're spec'd at 6 foot high.
6
So
foot.
we have a total of 9 foot of initial
Right.
height coverage.
I think that's good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
I just want to compliment you on the process you've gone through, and you've listened to us in almost every way that things we've asked for or things we considered, and I think this plan represents a very productive process.
I agree. It worked well both ways.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with the changes per the final.
Hold on a second. It's not a public hearing, but if you have a comment you'd like to make, I'll need you at the microphone. Thank you. And I need you to identify yourself as well.
Here's the form that you my name is Jack Klosnick, and my sister Ann is in the room as well. She owns the property at 9470 Lakeshore Boulevard, and I own the property at 9486 Lakeshore Boulevard, which would be the property that's immediately adjacent to this Summers development, immediately to the west of it. From Lakeshore, it extends from Lakeshore Boulevard to West Heisley Road. And my concern is a couple things. So we have a total of about 14 to 15 acres at that location. And I think there are two issues that we need to raise, and two issues are this. We believe that our property needs to be rezoned so that it's compatible with what's going on with the Summers development. We are working with Barrington Consulting to put together a proposed plan to present to the Planning Commission and Mr. Spence, and to go through the steps that need to be followed. I believe Mr. Novak has been in contact with certain members of the commission. And so my concern is that issue needs to be addressed, because otherwise the property becomes landlocked and not accessible other than from Lakeshore Boulevard. And so my concern is one, is the rezoning of the Klosnick property, probably to Village Green, so that it's compatible with the Summers development. And second of all, I think that an issue needs to be addressed as to whether there will be street access from the Summers development to the Klosnick property for future development. And I think that's consistent with actually the street code, which is 1117.02 paren small b and paren small c, that talks about connections shall be provided to adjoining properties for future access. That's subsection B. And C provides that local streets shall be laid out so as to discourage through traffic while providing for interconnection of neighborhoods. So the Klosnick property is sandwiched between the Hathaway development and what will be the Summers development. I think that what we're talking about for the Klesnick property is consistent with smart growth as discussed in the master plan, I believe, for the city of Mentor. What does this all mean? We're not opposed to the Summers development in any way. But I think that what is not addressed in the current plan, as was put up on the screen, is an access point to the Klesnick property. And I believe it would be at sublots 16 and 17, which is Phase 2, as I understand what is in the agenda today, that those two sublots probably should be not developed immediately until that issue is addressed. That would be, in my view, where a cul-de-sac access point would have to be considered to avoid closing off the Klesnick property from future development. And I should say the Klesnick property is currently agricultural use. We've been there since 1955, and we believe we've been good citizens and we serve the community. We want to look to the future now that everything around us has suddenly become residential housing. And I think that Village Green zoning is an appropriate zoning classification for both the Summers development and probably for the Klesnick property for future development. And so that's what I would ask, is that you look at the sublots 16 and 17 on the Summers conceptual plan or development plan, and that's, I believe, in Phase 2 of their development, while we get to you our plans so that you can look at those and address the two issues. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. How long have we been wrestling with this, Mr. Spence?
Since the rezoning,
Yeah, but how long ago was that?
Here.
Roughly. I don't need a specific. But Mr.
last
Novak,
August.
yeah, Mr. Novak was in talking about that way back when.
Right, they've got 3 points of access to the Klesnick property. They got West Heisley Road, they got Lake Shore, and they got Hathaway.
Okay. Well,
His development's got 2 points of access.
Okay, well, I'm not going to get into an argument here tonight on pushing and shoving about how many access points there are, but if you want to have your guy, Mr. Novak from Barrington, bring forward to the commission an idea for rezoning of that, I think we'll welcome that, right, Mr. Spence?
We'll look at it.
Yeah. I say welcome, I mean, I'm not saying would agree to it necessarily, but we certainly welcome the opportunity to discuss it. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga.
And I think, just for the clarity of everyone else in the room and the folks at home, Village Green rezoning is based on a plan. The rezoning doesn't come first. The plan comes first to see if it qualifies for that rezoning. So we wouldn't concern ourselves with the rezoning until there's a plan to see if you meet the requirements of Village Green.
Understood, and that's why we have Barrington Consulting
Right.
engaged to do that. I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So was there a motion on the floor?
Yes, I was making a motion.
Okay.
4 conditions with condition 1, 3, and 4 being changed from the final subdivision plan submittal to the building permit submittal. So the wording being changed on those 4.
Second.
Jess?
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mrs. Simperman.
Yes.
Ms. Moritz.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Valeri.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Thanks for your time and input.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for the evening.
What's,
I'm kidding. I want to see if I get a rise out of Mr. Zeman. So item number 12, or 13, code amendments, chapter 1171. Go right ahead.
That's mine.
Or
Yeah.
who's in the barrel?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, the administration's looking to ground signs at the street right-of-way at a 5-foot setback. You can have a certain size, and it's 5 feet wide, 10 feet high, and it's 40 square feet. We found the need to look at allowing for larger ground signs for if you're a distance off the right-of-way, and those distances would be for places like the Cleveland Clinic, the Great Lakes Mall, and some properties along State Route 2, where if they had a ground sign that was located a distance off that right-of-way, that they could increase the massing of the sign. So based on that distances, we increased the size of the signage to where at 400 feet, you could go with an 18-foot height and so forth, and it goes up like, I think, 2 feet for every 100 foot that you go. But this would provide us with a standard in the future. The second thing we looked at doing is on, like at the mall where you have another entrance. They have an entrance, a couple on Menor Avenue, one on 84, and then some on Plaza Boulevard. If those are 300 feet apart, the previous code allowed for a ground sign, but it wasn't the same size as was allowed for. It was smaller, and we think that should be consistent. It should be the same size sign, 40 square feet, and then if the sign was located a distance off, it would meet those same requirements that we specified under the first subsection of it.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Being the city in this case.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Simperman.
so how many of these kinds of variances have been coming to the Board of Zoning Appeals?
What, for ground signs? Well, Great Lakes Mall, Colonial Plaza had one, Rollcraft, all those along State Route 2 got.
But according to this, if they're going to be 18 feet tall if they're 400 feet off the freeway?
Yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, those variance requests were to have additional size
Right.
at a standard minimum setback. The idea being that, and we're still gonna get those. I mean, there's always gonna be someone who says, you know what, I just need a bigger sign at a whatever setback. I think the idea here is that if you've got a corporate campus, for example, they may not want a sort of a traditional 40 square foot ground sign at a 5-foot setback. They may be satisfied with something further set back, which is more, frankly, not a traditional two-dimensional sign. It may be a piece of statuary or something of that nature. A corporate logo would be engraved on it. And yes, you could have retail centers such as the mall, such as some of the other larger retail centers here in the city that may want to have what we would classify as a sign, but more of a architectural element, something a little bit not two-dimensional. And so it's for those types of uses that the code amendment would probably come into play. I don't necessarily know that someone would utilize this in lieu of a 40 square foot sign at a 5-foot setback, unless there was something really, really unique. And again, we're looking at corporate campuses, we're looking at, the large commercial centers, and frankly, the Cleveland Clinic. You can imagine wanting to maybe utilize this code section for purposes of some of the signage that it would install in a campus environment.
I guess I'm just having a hard time because in those cases, you look at it case by case. And I was on the BZA when we were looking at the Rollcraft and the ones on Route 2. And, yeah, they did want bigger signage, but, not necessarily a whole lot taller. We wanted to keep the signs low. We didn't want them to be obstructive. And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of these signs. You're talking about large campuses. We don't have that many places around here. And I guess I'm leery to change the code and allow maybe something that later on is going to come back to bite us.
So is it the recommendation of the city that this be done? I mean, that's your recommendation, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Zimperman, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead, Mr. Trout.
Thank you. I would just point out that the zoning practice is a fluid one, and you perhaps may recall our back and forth relative to flag lots. And the administration, at least during my tenure with the city, had an initial policy. We changed it back again. And so there has been some fluidity relative to zoning requirements. granted, we're talking about signage now, but we're looking at opportunities relative to developments, and we're trying to make accommodations, saying our sign standard doesn't necessarily fit, given the depth of some of the commercial properties that we're dealing with, or PUD properties. So as Mr. Spence pointed out, relative to the clinic, what could happen, there's an undeveloped parcel on Norton Parkway that is going to be facing 90. We don't know what that building is going to be, but we want to have the flexibility for visibility for that property as well. And there are, and there isn't an active development, but one could foresee at some point in time that the other side of Center Street, something might happen there. So we're trying to, zoning is also an anticipated vehicle, and we're going to, or we would like to have the flexibility for larger signage in some unique instances. And, you know, to the extent that we are, as you suggested, bitten, we go back to the drawing board and revise the code. But what we're trying to do now is to anticipate a need and make accommodation for it.
So has there been a problem with people getting the signage that they require?
Well, I would not say, I would not use the word require, I would say
Or
desire, yeah. And
So have
again,
they,
from,
I'm sorry.
yeah, from a technical standpoint, I guess I would say we agree with that the standard that we currently have in place doesn't address that extraordinary situation where we have a commercial property that's set back several hundred feet from the roadway. So much of our commercial and our industrial corridor has more or less conventional buildings set on set-size properties. But there are instances where, because of the uniqueness of the development, that the flexibility of this amendment would come into play.
Mr. Zeman, you were the author of the original sign ordinance, correct? And it's your recommendation that this be adjusted accordingly?
Well, I don't set policy, of course. I just review it for, you know, legal issues.
But you're here for a
And
reason.
so the question is it legally problematic? And I think the answer to that is no. It provides it's still key to the fundamental issues, which is that if someone opts to take a freestanding sign that they're allowed and set it back significantly from the right-of-way, that in order to still obtain legibility and visibility from the right-of-way, something's got to give, meaning that, you know, it's got to get higher, it's got to get larger. So it's still key to those fundamental concepts that, you know, we've structured the sign code around, all of which are informed by the constitutional right to communicate with the members of the public via exterior signage. And so there's nothing about this that's inconsistent with our practice and the legal analysis. And frankly, what it does is it allows, you know, if you've got an auto dealership and you want to have several hundred feet from the right-of-way, a classic automobile or something like that, and utilize that as a sign for persons that are coming into the dealership. Right now, we would not allow that. The vehicle would, if the vehicle's visible from the right-of-way and it's used as a sign platform, it's a sign. I don't know that, you know, you could use. So it's uses like that would be facilitated via this code amendment.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga?
What we're really talking about here is size. We're not talking about content, right?
No, we never talk about content, of course, no.
So this is basically just the idea that some signs, based on their placement, would be allowed to be larger based on the existing.
Distance from.
Correct.
But that it doesn't make any allusion to changing the ability to discuss the appropriateness of a sign or the content of a sign, or.
Well, no, content's completely off limits, but it would allow for three-dimensional displays. Right now, the sign code limits freestanding signs to two-dimensional displays, basically two sign faces, no more than 2 feet parallel to one another. So that's why I'm trying to utilize an example where you may have an auto dealership that says, well, we're going to utilize this classic automobile as a sign platform. We'll have our logo on it, but it's going to be set back hundreds of feet from the right-of-way. This is going to be part of an entry feature that we're going to create here at our dealership. Right now, if that car is visible from the right-of-way and it's used as a platform for a sign, the entire thing is the sign, not just the copy that's on it. So this would allow, so that's just I'm just making up that example. That's not a real-world example, of course. But
Let me just play with that example. So what I personally don't want to see is someone take that shape of a car, move it back 300 feet, and make that car 40 feet long.
Well, yeah, that I think would exceed the dimensions.
No, I mean, but
Right.
that you would then start creating, because you can put the sign on the car and put it next to the street, you could take that same shape and put it back 300 feet, and then all of a sudden you'd have this huge car with a sign on it. It's
Yeah.
not that's
But still,
where
yeah,
the content becomes a problem.
Well, the dimensions of whatever it's placed on are still regulated. So car's probably not a great example. It probably would exceed it may very well exceed the area limitations, even at an increased setback. Now, you can still have an image of a car. I mean, if you got 40 square feet right next to the right-of-way, you can have an image.
Of a car, but
Exactly.
I'm not sure I want to see a big car. I mean.
Not next to the right-of-way, no.
Right, you understand
That
what
would
I'm
be
saying.
preserved. But I just want you to understand that the idea is to have not just flexibility in size, but to allow for some creativity as well when it's interior to the site. And the public's interest in sort of preventing that from happening, if it is set back hundreds of feet from the right-of-way, we think is fairly minimal. And so allowing anyone a little greater flexibility as to how they communicate seems like it wouldn't cause any harm.
I'm just trying to get my hands around this too, because I don't want this to be a camel's nose under the tent kind of thing, where all of a sudden we've got something that no one had anticipated. Can we suggest that this sign idea, this thing that we want them to be able to build, is limited to sign components and architectural components? Rather than components that I have no idea what they might be?
The difficulty that we run into is right now, the way the sign code is structured is we really, the sign has two meanings under the code. It's the medium on which copy is placed. So for a freestanding sign, it's the physical box that's right next to the sign is also the copy that's placed on it. We don't regulate the copy that's placed on it, except for very, very limited, but we certainly regulate the box. Now, if someone wanted to have, if it's a shoe store and they want to have a large shoe, and that was going to be their sign, and they want to put a logo on it, and they wanted that right next to the right-of-way, that would be prohibited under current code. We think that's just not good planning and probably, well, for a variety of reasons. Let's say, though, 200 feet back from the right-of-way, directly in front of their store, they wanted to utilize that type of a display and have their logo on it. Is the necessity of preventing that from, again, what's the harm that would be that would be prevented by allowing them to do that as sort of an entry feature? So it's at that point in time, the sign, the medium, the structure itself becomes expressive content as well. So it's a little difficult to say that you have to incorporate it as an architectural element.
Well, the maximum width you're gonna get's 9 feet. At 100 feet, you're at a 6-foot width. So it's proportional.
I guess I'm not concerned about the size. I mean, we could all debate about what the appropriate size is to communicate whatever the message is from one place to another. I'm more concerned about what this thing starts to become. If it's someone wants to build an architectural tower and have signs on 4 sides or something like that, and it becomes a part of the content or the composition of a development, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, I'm not comfortable with a huge shoe sitting in front of, on the ground or something sitting in front of a shoe store. Does that mean then the plumber gets to put a big plumber's helper on the face of his building? And, we start getting kind of, a little bit like Las Vegas,
I guess, yeah. the shoe's probably a terrible example, but,
No, no, it's just.
but for example,
no,
the
I mean,
hard-
it's neutral, I don't know,
For-
you know,
for
I mean, it's as
example-
good as anything else. Upon
For
this-
example, the Hard Rock Cafe has
Yeah,
that,
a guitar.
it uses a guitar, a freestanding guitar. Maybe that's a better example as to a more, well-known logo. Now, I'm sure they'd love to have that right next to the right-of-way, but under these revisions,
And in some places, they're allowed to do that.
it would, exactly.
Yeah.
But in Mentor, they would not, and these revisions would not preclude that, although it could be an image of a guitar on a freestanding sign. Now, if they still wanted to use that guitar and they wanted to set it back 100 feet, 200 feet, or whatever, that would be allowed under this revision.
Another more classic example might be a barber pole, which is a three-dimensional feature, and again, unless it was within that prescribed setback from the edge of a building, wouldn't be permitted.
I guess my concern is is like the kind of content that this becomes, or the environment. Barber pole is on the face of the building, on the sidewalk, it's proportional to the pedestrian and the person going, it's a historical kind of illusion, and I can accept that. I'm not sure I want to see a 24-foot barber pole, just because it would work with the geometry or the sizing that would take place, because you set it way back. I'm not sure I want to see a 24-foot high barber pole, because it's no longer in context with reality. It just becomes a kind of decorative, out-of-context item. It's not. It loses the context of being in a building environment. It loses the context of architectural treatment. That's why I was asking, can we limit this idea to the sign, to the message that they have the right to communicate, but to incorporate it within architectural components, to make it more of the architectural environment of the building and this now larger sign.
The difficulty that we've got with that is that it is detached from the building. At the end of the day, this isn't wall signage, this isn't a canopy, this isn't a marquee or anything. It is going to be a freestanding sign. So it's a little hard to basically sort of say that it therefore has to relate to the architecture of the building. Basically and again,
I mean, we could say that. and I'm not
well, for
saying-
instance, the guitar logo for the Hard Rock has nothing to do with the architecture of the building. It's a guitar. It's a giant guitar, and that's what it is. And so this code revision would allow for that type of installation. However, it has to be set back pretty significantly from the right-of-way.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on, Mr. Valeri has a question. If Mr. Vargas finished.
Well, I guess the only point of concern I have is not the message, but the content. The message is free to be expressed, whatever their names, but the fact that we might start getting components in the environment that are askew from what would be a normal commercial or a residential environment, that you'd start seeing things that are out of scale, out of content, and from a planning point of view, it just starts to become a little bit like Las Vegas, where, every little property has their own huge thing in front of it, and and that becomes a brand for them, but it's also Las Vegas, it's not Mentor. So the content of the thing is the only thing that's kind of bugging me. Go ahead, I think I've said enough.
Mr. Valeri.
I guess my concern with this is using this shoe example or the guitar example. We would almost be encouraging people to say, I don't want a sign at the street anymore. I'm going to put a sign closer to my building so I can go potentially up to 16 feet high. When I think of signage and I think of the signs and I think of some of the buildings that I drive by on a daily basis, that bothers me, it concerns me, to think of a large structure that I could potentially work around the system by saying I'm going to put it back because I want a bigger, larger sign. I want something that's going to be higher. And by changing and allowing it without seeing it, we lose all ability to know what we're actually going to get. And I think the BZA process, it may be a burden. It may cause a little bit more of a headache. but I think looking at those on a case by case, if I see a Cleveland Clinic sign that's up against the building, do they need it right next to the building? Is it because they're 400 feet off the road? Maybe. Is it gonna be part of their branding? Maybe. But if I think of, I don't wanna pick on anybody, but if I think of a single use or a retailer who's gonna be 200-300 feet off, who says let's put up a different sign, and here's the advantage that we can go with because we're 200 feet off the right of way, and now I can go with the sign that's a maximum of 14 feet. The elevations of these, I think, is a concern for me. And just by changing it right off the bat, without having a specific example, for me, I struggle with that. Thank you.
Mrs. Simperman.
So when I was looking at this originally, where do we mention the three-dimensional?
It becomes an exception to that prohibition. So if you want to look at 11, I'm not sure, there's a cover sheet on your packet, and so where the revisions start with the red letter revisions start, 117116, look to the bottom of that page.
It says except solely when erected in conformity.
Right, it's an exception to the prohibition. Signs are limited to two-dimensional graphic displays. The use of statuary, equipment, products, or any such like displays is prohibited. And then the revised language is in red, except solely when erected in conformity to section 117118 D2F.
Okay, yeah, all right. I missed that. So I guess my problem isn't so much signage being several hundred feet off, that part of the code doesn't bother me quite so much as the three-dimensional part of the code. And therefore, I agree with Mr. Valeri's comments. Again, I think if you're 400 feet off and you have a two-dimensional sign, you probably deserve a two-dimensional sign at that point. But if you're gonna be able to do 400 feet off and do something different, then I have a problem. And I tend to agree with him with the height, too. I think we've been doing it with a case-by-case basis. You see what it looks like, you have an idea what it looks like. I kind of like the BZA process. There's not that many of these that come before the BZA, as far as I can tell.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just have one more question, just so I understand this. But these are all considered ground signs? This whole discussion about
Correct.
signs supported on the ground?
Yes, yes.
So we're no longer talking about signs supported on the building?
Wall signs are not under discussion for any revisions,
Not
no.
this- And nothing that would be on the roof?
No, that's still completely prohibited.
Okay, so
Prohibited.
This is just something that's on the ground in proximity to a tenant or
Yeah, likely,
commercial
obviously.
activity.
Well, again, the reason we're saying it's going to be in close proximity to the building is because once you're several hundred feet off by the right-of-way, that's naturally going to get it closer to the building. It's not going to be in the middle of a parking lot typically, so.
Well, but there would be nothing to keep it from being in the parking.
Well, yeah, but, and they'd have to come back for revise the site plan, they'd lose parking spaces, may have to modify drive aisles. I mean, that would be we'd certainly not allow them to just plop it in the middle of a parking space.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Varga.
No.
Mrs. Simperman.
No.
Ms. Moritz.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
No.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Valeri.
No.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. So what is it, 3 to 4? 4, so it doesn't pass.
Well, it'll go to council with a negative
With a
recommendation.
negative, right.
Correct.
Okay. So they have the ability, the council will have the ability to do with it what they please.
Yes, and it's,
Okay. I was looking to the lawyer for a yes or no answer.
oh, well, again, it'll go with a negative recommendation, and I don't mean to be dismissive. I'm, the planning commission's input tonight, I think, was extremely valuable, so.
Okay. So that would be a yes or no answer.
Could you rephrase the question, Senator?
It goes from us to the council.
Where were you on the 16th? Come on, I want to know.
Council, well, this is legislation, so council can approve it or disapprove it as it deems appropriate.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Mr. Spence, nothing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Seems that we've already adjourned, yeah.
I know.